This is Tara LaRosa, and you're listening to MMA Think Tank.
You're listening to MMA Think Tank with Jay and Mike.
All right, Mike, it's been another couple of weeks since our last episode. And how have you been the last 2 weeks?
I'm doing pretty good, Jay. You know, I've been working pretty hard. July 4th is coming up tomorrow. Are you doing anything big for the holiday?
No, not at all. I'm just relaxing. Finally got a day off and an extra day off, and I will just be relaxing at home with the family.
Well, that's awesome, man. I will be working tomorrow, but that's because I am taking some time off to go to the UFC fan convention, doing some International Fight Week stuff. So, talking about fights, Jay.
Interestingly enough, Mike, I have to bring it up. When we were interviewing Heather Bassett, I do recall you saying there, you flubbed up. You said you'd never been to a live pro fight, and you've been to many, sir. So why don't you clear that up?
Jay, I'm glad you brought that up. I felt really weird after that interview when I said that. So yes, I've been to a lot of fights. Jay, of course, has been to a lot of fights as well.
We've been to fights together. So I was about to say, well, what do you mean there? But I know, of course, you meant amateur fights. You've never been to the amateur fights. Yeah. Neither have I. But I just wanted to clear that up for the audience because I'm like, these guys never have been to a fight before, you know, they're just watching all this stuff on TV. Not that that's anything wrong with, you know, there's nothing wrong with watching it all on TV. Matter of fact, it's better views, you know.
Right.
But being there sometimes is just a great experience, and you could attest to that. Yeah,
I'll be there for the Thursday show, the Ultimate Fight Night 90 with Alvarez, and he'll be fighting Dos Anjos for the belt. But before we get into that, Jay, let's go ahead and do some recaps for some events that ended that we haven't talked about.
Yeah, it is International Fight Week, so let's get into it. Let's get into UFC Fight Night 89, Mike.
Rory McDonald versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Not a barn burner like a lot of us thought, kind of a chess match. Thompson dominated the fight, though, 50-45, 50-45, 48-47, which I thought was an odd score. But, Jay, what did you think?
Chess match, indeed. I thought it was a very good, well, I want to say I kind of expected it to go not as slowly as it did, but I understood it. I understood that both guys are dangerous, and we saw what Rory was trying to do, and basically was trying to catch Wonderboy in a leg lock several times with that roll thing he was doing there. And, well, we know that Thompson, he's a big kickboxer and karate guy. I think that Rory was trying to catch him off guard and get him to the ground, and it just didn't work out that way, so the chess match was on, and basically we saw a lot of two guys scared to pull the trigger.
Yeah, I also thought that it was interesting that I didn't see a lot of movement from Thompson that you normally see. He did do some of it, his bouncing back and forth, but he said at the end of the fight, in the post-fight interview, that he could tell from the beginning that this is going to be a different type of fight the way Rory was coming out. So he had to switch things up, and I think especially for McDonald, he just beat former champ Johnny Hendricks. Now he just beats the number 2 guy in former title contender, Rory McDonald. To be able to switch that up on a dot just like that, I think it bodes really well for him, and I'm certainly looking forward to see him fight the winner of Tyron Woodley and Robbie Lawler, assuming that's the way it goes, which is what we all pretty much think. Yeah,
and what it shows is that Thompson he's not the type of fighter that he's not going to go in there guns blazing. He knows his opponents, and he was well aware of the fact that McDonald could have done something to him to try to get him to the ground, or even just head kicked him, and made it lights out. It could be over in that instant. But Thompson fought very composed, well, he's a veteran. He knows how to fight.
He's certainly a veteran now, and you look at these guys' faces, and at the end of the fight, and you can't. You're not supposed to judge a fight by faces, but I bring it up solely to talk about Rory McDonald in his last couple fights, just destroyed by Robbie Lawler. The fight was great against Robbie Lawler, the previous fight to this one, but really busted up. Now he's busted up in this one. This is his last fight on his contract. He's going into free agency. He said that he may not stay with the UFC. You just never know. I hope he does, but it's not a good fight to go out on for your last fight, Jay.
No.
Do you want him in the UFC still? Do you think he should go to Bellator? What do you think?
No, I definitely want him back in the UFC. I think he's one of the elite in the UFC. And I think that, the guy's had a couple of bad fights, and actually the one against Lawler, the two against Lawler were not bad fights at all.
Right.
They were fantastic. But the problem is Lawler is like a machine. Yeah, he'll brawl you, but you can't knock the guy out. I mean, you need some serious power to do it.
Yeah, it was close in that round 2 or 3 in their previous fight, but Lawler was saved by the bell, or at least it looked like it.
And plus, he's 26 year old. He's 26 years old, Mike. So I mean,
we're
he's
talking
still
about Rory,
young.
right?
Yeah, Rory's still young, and the guy's got a lot of talent. That guy is so well rounded, and that's one of the things that was very scary in this fight for Thompson. Again, Thompson is the kickboxer and karate guy. That's his staple. And here he is fighting a guy who's more well-rounded, younger, possibly has more cardio. Who knows? Even though Wonder Boy is amazing with cardio, you never know with these younger guys. And you know what? I thought they fought a pretty intelligent fight, but Rory, unfortunately, he was at the short end of it.
Well, I certainly want all the greatest fighters in the UFC. I want them under one banner. Currently, it's the UFC. So I certainly am agreeing with you, Matt. I want him there. We also had Donald Cerrone versus Patrick Cote in the co-main event. Man, Cowboy really just had that fight the whole way. Finally got the TKO in round 3. Cote is no joke. He was moving ahead in the welterweight division, close to a top 10 status. And Cowboy in his second fight at welterweight, and his first true fight at welterweight, I'd say, because the first fight he fought kind of on short notice against another kind of bloated up welterweight. Jay, what do you think of that, man?
Well, all I'm saying is that Donald Cerrone he's 30-7, so he's had plenty of pro fights here.
Yep.
But really, this is his real first welterweight fight, and the guy looked amazing. I say Donald Cerrone stays at welterweight. I don't want to see him at 155. I think the weight cut's too hard, and I think the guy has some great promise here at welterweight, because what he did to Patrick Cote was nothing short of amazing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's done pretty much all he can, I think, at lightweight for the years he has left. And I'm not saying he's an old guy yet, but for the good years he has left, let's take that, try and take that belt at welterweight. Of course, guys, Jay and I have talked about that. Cowboy has a good shot against a lot of the guys at welterweight.
Yes.
And I continue to think that after his destruction of Patrick Cote. I don't want to stop talking about this fight right now, but I just want to say to everybody out there, we're going to move a little fast and probably here because we have so much on the show to talk about. We want to make sure we cover some of the news corner. Of course, UFC 200 and all that stuff's coming up. But Jay, does Cowboy get a top 10 guy now?
Yeah. You give him a top 10 guy. We had Patrick Cote, who was on an upswing, had a 3-fight win streak, was looking good, and just got dismantled by a guy in Donald Cerrone, who's, like we said, essentially never fought at welterweight. I mean, he did before, but it was at short notice. And I didn't really count that fight, I mean, you have to, but this was his real fight where he was going for welterweight, and he destroyed Patrick Cote. I say you give him a top 10 guy. Donald Cerrone looked like a top 10 welterweight that night.
Well, I agree. You agree. The UFC agrees, and I just want to see what you thought before, because he's going to fight Rick Story, and that's official. We'll talk about that in the news corner when we get down to there. So he's fighting, a better guy.
And that's
so
a great fight, by the way. Great fight.
Yeah, I'm happy for that. Joanne Calderwood versus Valerie Letourneau. man, I mean, what a crazy fight that was. Really weird stuff going on. I mean, TKO in round 3 was what it was from punches and a body kick for Calderwood. Letourneau was always grabbing her shirt. There was kind of a malfunction there I read about later on from Letourneau herself, wardrobe malfunction. But I think Calderwood just kind of had her besides that in the fight, Jay.
Yeah. Calderwood almost knocked her out in the first round.
Yeah.
It almost happened. It didn't. Letourneau's a tough person to fight, and she was game the whole fight. The thing is it seems to me that Calderwood has just finally come to really fight. And I don't mean any disrespect by saying that. I think that this is the first time in the UFC I've seen her look like she has looked in Invicta. That's what I'm saying. Because her first fight when she came out and fought against Ham in the Ultimate Fighter finale back in the day, 2014, she didn't look that great. She won a decision there, but she didn't look that great. Then she lost to Moroz.
Yep.
And she looked terrible. And then she won another decision where she looked okay, nothing spectacular. But that night, she looked great against Valerie Letourneau.
Yeah, there's two things that were going on. You know, there was the personal problems she was going through.
Yes.
And I haven't read too much into it outside. I know there was personal problems, and she's now with Jackson Winklejohn, I believe. She's with a big camp now. If it's not Jackson Winklejohn, guys, it's another big camp. But I mean, now if you got a big camp in your corner, which she didn't have before, she was still training in the over in the UK, and there's some decent fight camps in the UK. Don't get me wrong. But you come over to someone like Jackson Winklejohn, you start training in America, it's going to up your game for sure. I liked that Calderwood was able to, like you said, knock her down the first round. I don't remember if she knocked her down the second round as well, but she came out in that first round for sure and said, "This is how it's going to go, Valerie," and I put it to her. Yeah,
and they did fight at flyweight, so this was, I guess, all a product of all that stuff she's been through, and she just said she couldn't make it to 115 right just yet, so she fought a 125-pound fight, but she is definitely going back to strawweight.
Yeah, that's right, and Letourneau said that it was something that she would probably rather do at 125 because her weight cut it's kind of the opposite. It's very tough for her to do, so she'll just go to stay at 125 if it's there. And maybe Tara La Rosa, who we interviewed a couple weeks ago, maybe she'll show up there as well.
Yeah, I would love that.
Also, we also had the WSOF 31. There's a couple big fights around that. A heavyweight champ, Blagoy Ivanov, was fighting Josh Copeland. Ivanov won by unanimous decision, 49-46, 49-46, 48-47. It's a crazy back and forth brawl. It was kind of fun. It's not something that I want my MMA to be. Jay, I'm pretty sure you agree on that as well. Yeah. We've talked, of course.
Rock'em Sock'em Robots.
But once in a while, it wasn't bad.
Yeah, it was Rock'em Sock'em Robots. That's what we got. And they're fun, but it's not, like you said, it's not the MMA I like to watch. I like to, I like to watch a match that's not a complete chess match. I like to see what game plans come to fruition, so to speak. I like to see these guys lay it all out in the ring and do their things without having to just sit there in front of each other and blow by blow.
And give me some grappling too, which would be great.
Yeah.
But what I drew from this fight was I considered Blagoy Ivanov to be maybe a top 10 guy at heavyweight. I think not just because of his record or his knockouts, but he just seems to have it, in my opinion. But Josh Copeland, he came in there. He was a washout from the UFC, but was still fairly well. Had really good shows in the regional promotion. So I like the fact that he was able to stay with Ivanov, and I'm not saying Josh Copeland is the next big thing, but certainly could in his young career, I believe he only has about 15 fights. Yeah. He could move on and become somebody big as well.
Yeah, and when you fight like that in the last minute of the last round if you were losing bad. That's when you fight like that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Jason High versus Mike Ricci, that was the co-main event. This is really both High and Ricci's. Those are sophomore fights in the promotion, so they already cut their teeth in WSOF. High got the TKO in round 2. Ricci, he had High on wobbly legs, but High did come back and get the big TKO. If High was to lose that fight, that would have been really bad, of course, for his career. But the fact that he's now, out of the UFC and he wouldn't be able to, get it done in the WSOF, even though Ricci is a decent guy, I think it pretty much saved High's career, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. But like you said, Mike Ricci isn't one of those guys that, well, I mean, he didn't do so well in the UFC when he was there.
Right.
And I didn't expect much of him at the WSOF either.
Yeah, he got the head kick knockout in his last fight in the lightweight tournament, but then was hurt. He couldn't move on. I don't remember who he knocked out, but he was still hurt enough to where he couldn't go forward. But Jason High won this fight, and he's going to fight the lightweight champ Justin Gaethje. That's for sure. It's not on the books quite yet where or when, but High versus Gaethje, I think it's going to be a sound fight. And just quickly on my side, for me, I'm picking Gaethje.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. That said, Jason High, I think, doesn't stand a chance. Unfortunately,
yeah, I think that Gaethje, that punch from Ricci would have just put High away.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Jay, we've got two final fight cards, Bellator 156 and Bellator 157. I guess we'll start at the earlier one. 156 was Marcos Galvão versus Eduardo Dantas 2. Dantas won by unanimous decision, 50-45, 50-44, 50-43. Those are not, I didn't write those down wrong. That is correct. It was just a shellacking. Dantas picked Galvão apart to win the belt back. It was really a thing of beauty, of destruction. And
I think we both called that fight. I think we both picked Dantas to win that fight, and rightfully so. That's what he did. Galvão, something about Galvão. Do you think he was on that night? Do you think there was?
I think he was probably fine. I just think that he's a little older than
Dantas.
Dantas.
Yeah, he's just that much better.
Dantas is just ready to go, man. I think he's got that spring in his step. He's got that spirit. He's really ready to go, man. I really believe it.
Yeah, I think so too.
And to put it on Galvão the way he did, now a former champ, I would really put Dantas in the top 10 of bantamweights. I think he could really do well in the UFC. His movement's really well. Yeah. His stand-up game is really well. So
yeah, I'm total agreement.
One other fight that night that I thought was something to take a look at was Brandon Halsey versus John Salter. Brandon Halsey was the former middleweight champ. This was his first fight back from losing his belt. But Salter got the triangle in round 1. It's a big win for him. Being a former middleweight champ, proving he's for real in his Bellator debut. I mean, they gave him like a really good guy in his Bellator debut. Something I said on the last podcast, though, guys, or when we discussed, we're making picks for this, was I did pick Halsey, I'm pretty sure, but I had watched some fights from Salter and said this guy was the real deal. Maybe not the real deal as a contender, because it's a little too early for that. But the guy has chops, and he showed them. Our final event recap we've got here is Bellator 157 Dynamite 2. We're not going to really talk about the kickboxer or anything like that. Not really anything me and Jay are too much into. But Jay, let's talk Rampage Jackson versus Satoshi Ishii. Yeah. Jackson won by split decision, 29-28, 28-29, 30-27. Jay, Jackson should have lost. And yes. Who gave Jackson the 30-27?
Yeah, who? That's what I would like to know. That Ishii was, well, quite frankly, I mean, it was a robbery. I mean, it was. Yeah. Ishii won that fight, hands down. I gave him the first 2 rounds.
I did too.
And for somebody to give him one of those rounds was bad. But for both of those rounds, come on. Come on. So
yeah, Jackson, he for sure won the third round. He got the takedown, got some good ground and pound.
You mean exactly round again? You mean exactly what Ishii did to him in the first 2 rounds?
Exactly.
So he won the last round solidly for doing what Ishii did to him in the first 2. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, I went back and watched the second round just to see maybe I'm wrong here, or just even if I'm not wrong, at least kind of see, okay, that's what they were looking at. No, there was nothing there.
Yeah,
it was steadily for Jackson. I don't know what to say other than it was a robbery, like you said. And Jay, something I didn't write about on the Facebook because I didn't have time was it looks like Rampage Jackson has a thyroid problem, and that's why he's having a hard time dropping the weight. That might have been why he was heavy in that fight. And we'll see if he fights at heavyweight again. Because
I think it's time. It's time to just retire. It's time.
Yeah, I think you could be right, man. I mean, obviously he's not the fighter he once was, and now he's dealing with health problems. So
it's time. If there's a serious health problem there and you can't drop weight because of it, well, you might want to start thinking about, calling it quits, especially at his age and his career he's had. Just go out on a high, man.
Yeah, maybe they give him 1 or 2 more fights. Maybe somebody he can knock out. Not a grappler that can take him down. Maybe they do that.
Yeah, but I'm starting to think that. Well, is there anybody he can knock out right now? I mean, and unless somebody just stands in front of him with their hands behind their back, is he going to be able to knock out anybody anymore? I just don't know.
Yeah, good point. The talk right now before we move on is it's something that I've wanted to talk about this on this podcast for a while, but I just forget because of all the stuff that's happening. This sport has blown up so big now that everything's going on. But Jay, when we got Kimbo Slice, Tito Ortiz, and Rampage Jackson all in the same, Bellator, all in Bellator, how have it just been Rampage and King Mo fighting against each other? Why don't we have King Mo fighting Tito or Tito fighting Rampage?
Yeah.
Why does that not happen?
Yeah.
Now, it looks like Rampage is okay with fighting his good friend Tito, and that very well could be the next fight. Okay.
Well, it's the battle of the has-beens and the battle,
right.
battle of the guys I really don't care to watch in the cage anymore, but oh well. It is what it is. And and it's funny because I'm about to say it. I mean that with all due respect, even though that is kind of a bashing. I mean it with all due respect. I have looked up to these guys in the past. I just can no longer do it. I mean, come on.
I can see Rampage and Tito fighting each other as something that happens to older fighters where they call it kind of a quote-unquote legends match. So I'd be down to watch it. It's just that with the way they've both fought lately, it's not like someone like Chuck Liddell who lost his chin or Matt Hughes that just got too old and he wasn't able to get his striking moved along to that point in his career. They still had their strengths. They could still knock people out and they could still take guys down. But these guys now, they just don't even use their strengths or they're not even worried to use them. So so I'm with you. Michael Chandler versus Patricky Pitbull. Talk about the complete opposite of an amazing fight. Chandler, amazing KO in round 1, won the vacant lightweight title. Man, just a fantastic fight. Or knockout, I should say. The fight wasn't, I guess, great in so much as it was one-sided. But I jumped off my couch, did the proverbial whoa, and went crazy.
Yeah, if I had a cage in my living room, I would have been standing on top of it, and I would have done a backflip, and just been so excited after that not because I think Michael Chandler's amazing. I respect the guy, and he's not one of my favorite fighters, but that punch he threw on Patricky Pitbull was the best knockout punch I've ever seen. The way it was thrown, the speed, the velocity in which it just connected on Patricky was just totally amazing.
Jay, if I knew anything about computers, I would have somehow pasted your face on top of Justin Gaethje. And so when he does that, flip off the cage that you just talked about, I could see your face on there. That would be hilarious.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Sadly, I don't know as much. Thankfully, you run the boards and do all the technical stuff. But something I want to bring up too. I mean, there's not really much to talk about the fight outside of the amazing KO. But Jay, who is one of my favorite fighters that fights in Bellator? He's kind of a new guy to there now, but he's not a new fighter.
Who's one?
Fights in the same division.
Oh, you're talking about Ben Henderson.
Guess who I think beats Ben Henderson?
Michael Chandler.
And I think he beats him bad. The reason I bring that up is because where does Michael Chandler go from here? Obviously, he defends the belt. I think that as much as I love Benson Henderson, he doesn't fight to really win anymore. He fights lackadaisical, and I think Michael Chandler will pound him out. Will really, really hurt him.
The thing about that one that's interesting, because I think Henderson's got a lot of gas tank, and he's got a lot of movement, which Patricky is not even close to Ben Henderson level in any of that.
Oh yeah, he's flat-footed for sure.
I just don't know. I mean, I don't know if he gets caught with a punch like that. I don't know.
Well, the reason
I would love
it
to
up
see the fight, though.
What I said before was also that the way Chandler has looked in his last few fights and his move to the Black Zillions, I believe, or I think it was the Blackstones. He moved to another camp, and he has just looked rejuvenated. And with Will Brooks no longer now in the UFC, I just see Chandler as running through the division and holding the belt for a while.
Yeah, I'm not saying that you're wrong, but I hope you are.
Well, yeah, I'd like Benson Henderson to win that belt for sure.
Yeah, I would like to see Benson Henderson there for sure, with the belt around his waist. So we'll see.
And that's certainly what's tough about when we call fights is we've got our favorite fighters, but sometimes you got to pick against them.
Yeah,
do you want to be wrong or do you want to be right? And last fight to talk about in this recap is Matt Mitrione versus Carl Siuman Tufa. And look, Matt Mitrione comes back after almost being knocked out, gets a knockout in round 1. I mean, that was crazy. I thought it was over when Carl knocked him down. But then when they showed the replay, it looked like he still had his wits about him.
Yeah, he did.
And was able to, I guess, Jay, let me get your take on should Carl, should he just continue to try and pound him out instead of choke him out? That's the consensus people are saying now after the fact.
Well, anybody sitting on the couch at home could say that after the fact. But
right, exactly.
We're not in there. We're not doing what they're doing. The guy thought he had Mitrione, and we all did too, until you ran it back and actually looked at it. I thought Mitrione was a goner too, but he wasn't, and I'm just glad that Matt Mitrione came back and knocked him out because I was expecting that. That's what I wanted to see, and he got it done.
Yeah, Mitrione lost in his debut in the UFC. Excuse me, in his debut in Bellator. It would have been pretty bad for him. It doesn't mean his stock would have dropped, enormously. But you want to win your debut and in a lesser promotion when you fought in the UFC. And I'll just finish it off with he's now going to fight Ollie Thompson at Bellator 158, and that's really just a couple weeks away.
Yep.
He has been cleared. A lot of us are wondering, man, is he going to get cleared for that? I mean, it's only at the time I think it was a month away. He has been cleared, even though he was walloped on. So I don't know much about Ollie Thompson. I'll just go with Mitrione, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know much about Ollie Thompson too, but the highlight reel that I've seen of him, he looks pretty darn scary. I will say that. He looks like a scary man. But of course, he's fighting against guys that I've never heard of.
Yeah, if you see highlights, and Jay, I think I've seen the same highlight you're talking about. If they're fighting in a ring and not a cage, that's going to tell you something right there.
Yeah. Says a lot, right?
Yep. Jay, I'm down to move to the news corner unless you have something else you want to talk about.
Let's get into some news.
News corner.
So we've got a lot of news. It's been really more than a couple of weeks since we've talked about news. So I've kind of got a chronological order of when it came out, but some of these things you guys may have heard, I've kind of lumped them together. Let's just start, though, with Anthony Pettis versus Charles the Bronx Oliveira at UFC on Fox 21. That's going to be August 27th in Vancouver, Canada. Anthony Pettis' first fight at featherweight, fighting Charles Oliveira. Jay, to me, this is similar to his last fight against Barbosa.
Yep. Just a different weight class. You got a smaller version of Barbosa there. I mean, well, not really. That's a bad analogy. But yeah, they fight similar, and I don't see Pettis winning. And is that what you're getting at?
Well, I'm on the fence right now, but the reason I'm going Oliveira is because he's been at this weight class longer.
Yep.
And he's used to it. And so I'm going to go with Oliveira, I guess, right now. Of course, that's just our prelim pick, so to speak. When it gets closer, we'll of course nail it down. But I will go with Oliveira right now as well.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and look at some tape and stuff and watch Oliveira and Pettis. Well, I don't even really need to watch Pettis. I need to watch more Oliveira because Oliveira, now, he's one of those guys that he gets hurt a lot and we don't hear from him for a while, and then he'll show up. Like, he doesn't fight very often.
Well, he's also like Barbosa in the fact that he's hot and cold.
Yeah, that
and when
too.
he's on, he's on. When he's off, he's off. The one thing, guys, if you do look at the stats, his loss to Max Holloway, that was an injury loss. If you remember, something happened to his clavicle or something like that.
Yes.
So don't put too much into that loss, guys. If you guys don't remember it,
yeah,
just look at the stats.
Yeah, they started off. I remember like the first 30 seconds looked like it was going to be a war, and then all of a sudden he grabbed his chest and started like grabbing his throat area, near his throat area, and we thought, what's going on? And then they stopped the fight. So. Yeah,
Yeah,
I remember
he had
that.
a busted clavicle, his shoulder, collarbone, or something like that.
Yeah.
Moving on. Same card, same day in Vancouver. Paige Van Zant versus Beck Rawlings. Paige Van Zant, obviously coming off Dancing with the Stars, gonna get back in camp, go to Team Alpha Male, train it up. Beck Rawlings, she's a good fighter. She's decent. I think it's a pretty good matchup for Paige Van Zant to get back, and for Beck Rawlings, it's a feather in her cap if she gets the win.
Yeah, it's not an easy fight for Van Zant for sure, and vice versa for Beck Rawlings. It's going to be a pretty good scrap, and that's one to look out for.
Yeah, I'm certainly going to go Van Zant right now, but I agree with you, man. It's going to be. I mean, I don't know if I'll call a round. It's going to be 3 rounds. So right now I'll just go decision. But
yeah, I don't know at this point. I'd have to look at it.
For sure.
Deeper.
Well, that's going to be, almost 2 months from now.
Yeah.
Some other fun news really coming out right now. A couple weeks ago was the Hall of Fame fight, I should say, for this year's UFC Hall of Fame induction is Pete Williams versus Mark Coleman from UFC 17. That was like one of the first head kicks heard around the world. Back when you could wear shoes in the octagon. We're talking about UFC 17 people. And Mark Coleman already in the Hall of Fame. But this fight where Williams just head kicked him, and he fell like a ton of bricks. Just an amazing fight.
Yeah, that was a long time ago, Mike.
Yeah, we're talking 90s.
When they wore shoes in there, man, that was when we were teenagers.
Oh yeah, that was probably 96 or something like that, 97. I'm not sure. Moving on though. A fight that I think is solely for Alexander Gustafsson to keep him in the title picture. Not that he, needs an easier fight, but they're giving him an easier fight. Alexander Gustafsson is fighting Jan Blachowicz at Fight Night 93 in Hamburg, Germany. You guys might remember Hamburg, Germany card already. It's got Barnett versus Arlovsky and Bader versus Latifi. But now Gustafsson is fighting Blachowicz. Jay, what's your thoughts?
Who?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Jan Blachowicz.
Yeah, I don't know who he is. I'd have to look into it. But at this point, I don't know if they're just trying to gift Gustafsson something here, a win. I would go with Gustafsson here for sure if we were to pick.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of leading in with too, is that it just seems that they want to give him a win to keep him in the title picture. He just lost to DC in a fight that he could have won. He loses to the really top echelon guys. So, but everybody else he seems to beat. So I think he's going to put a big beating on Jan Blachowicz. If not a beating, just a technical striking, display.
Yeah.
Speaking of beatings, though, Derek Brunson is now out of the UFC 200 fight with Gegard Mousasi. So we took a hit there in UFC 200. Thiago Santos is going to step in, and really quickly, he's 13-3. I'm talking about Santos here because a lot of us don't know him. I didn't know too much about him. Thiago Santos is 13-3, 8 KOs, 1 submission. He's on a 4-fight win streak over names such as Nate Marquardt, Elias Theodorou, and Steve Bosse. I'm really bummed Brunson is out, but they've got a guy that's a serviceable opponent for Gegard. Jay. And I'll go ahead and move on since we're going to talk about that when we talk about UFC 200, and just go on to something else we were talking about earlier about bad decisions. Another Pride former star like Rampage, Fedor Emelianenko gets controversial decision over Fabiano Maldonado at EFN 50 in Russia. That was, I thought it was kind of I don't know if it was a robbery, but they should have stopped it. I'll say that. What do you think?
Yeah, I really don't think that Fedor is worthy of coming to the UFC like people have been speculating or wanting him to at this point. It just, to me, if he's going to lose to a guy like Maldonado, it's not worth it to bring him.
Yeah, I certainly hear you on that. I'd still like to see Fedor walk to the octagon at least once, but they've got to give him somebody he can beat, man. His days of being even a semi-contender seem to be over. So let's just move on from there and just tell you that people in the Philippines are going to be happy. October 15th, the UFC is going to be back. No fights yet on the card. We're not sure who's on it yet. But if you think of the last fight card that was there in the Philippines, it had Edgar versus Faber as the main event, had Neil Magny and also Mark Munoz on the card. So they're going to give you at least a couple of good fights for sure. So I'm excited to see the UFC return to the Asia area. CM Punk versus Mickey Gall at UFC 203. That's going to be on September 10th in Cleveland. Miocic versus Overeem is the main event of that. Guys, I don't follow professional wrestling anymore. I used to when I was younger. I was a Hulkamaniac, so I don't know much about CM Punk as a professional wrestler. But this will be his debut in MMA.
Yeah.
He's constantly been pushed back because of injuries. I have seen Mickey Gall fight. I did see him in his UFC debut, and one of his fights that was on Dana White looking for a fight on Fight Pass. He's a decent guy. He's got 2 finishes. So this is not just a pushover fight for CM Punk.
Well, and we're going to find out here if these professional wrestlers indeed can take a punch to the face. Because there's some speculation out there still on whether or not
Brock
Lesnar is going to come back and take that punch to the face and be able to come forward.
From Mark Hunt.
Oh, I know. It's crazy. But if he takes a punch from Mark Hunt and comes forward, Mike, then all that is squashed completely. Because Brock, I mean, come on now. The guy did go through a big, a serious bout of diverticulitis. And, I mean, it crushed him physically, mentally.
Yep.
And the guy's back now. So hopefully he's in good top form because I want to see that old Brock Lesnar back.
Yeah, what do you think of CM Punk, though? He has no wrestling experience. No, he has pro wrestling experience, but he really doesn't have any
Real
collegiate wrestling experience.
Yeah, I know. You know what? The more they've kept this guy out of the octagon, I've thought it was more because they just felt he wasn't ready. That's what I'm thinking. I think a lot of these injuries and stuff were all just fake, to be blunt. I think that they were just keeping him out so he wouldn't hurt himself.
Jay, I don't know if you're right, but I've had the same thoughts as well.
Yeah, and that's just my guess. It's speculation.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to kind of a sad story. Well, no, it's not kind of a sad story. It is a sad story. UFC vet and former MFC light heavyweight champ Ryan Jimmo is dead at 34, sadly, in a hit and run. Jay, I'll certainly let you go ahead and get down some of the particulars since you're a little bit more on that than I have been. But I just want to say a quick story about Ryan Jimmo. I met him at the fan convention, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. This is before he was, I think, in the UFC, to be quite honest with you. And I had been watching the MFC, which is a Canadian promotion, on HD.net, which is one of those channels way up there on your cable, your dish. It's now called Access.tv. And they would show a lot of different promotions from around the world as well as regional promotions. And so I've been familiar with him. And I saw him and walking with his family. And I stop fighters anywhere and want to talk to him, take pictures. The guy was as amazing as they come. He was happy to do it. He seemed like he was happier to take the picture than I was getting the picture with him. I think because somebody recognized him in the fan convention.
Yeah. I
think he probably was going to be there incognito as it is. And I'll never forget that story. He was a great guy. And great knockout puncher. That knockout punch that he has like seven seconds in his debut. I mean, that's going to be in the books probably for a while. So great guy. And too bad he's gone this early. Yeah,
it really is. It's a sad situation. Apparently, just to give a little detail on the situation, I guess what had happened was him and his longtime girlfriend apparently were driving around June 25th, and this car behind him was tailing him pretty close and acting erratic or something, and Jimmo pulled over and went back there, had some words with the guys, got back in his car, and apparently they said something else. He got back out. Approached the car. I guess they ran over him and took off at that point. And so now, apparently, though, just a few days ago, they did make an arrest, or 2 arrests, I should say. This guy named Anthony Getchell and Jordan Wagner. Getchell was 23. Wagner was 21. Both young guys did something very stupid.
Both cowards.
Both cowards. They're facing second-degree murder charges in the death of Jimmo.
Yeah, I wasn't there, obviously, but so I say this. I start off that way just to say that no matter what you do, there's no reason to run a guy over with your car.
No.
If you're mad at somebody, even if that person's in the wrong, I mean, just let him drive off.
Yeah, and apparently, I guess just hours before that, he had proposed to his girlfriend. And actually, one thing I would just like to make a quick note of too is that I guess she's a woman of faith, Mike, as you are.
Yeah.
And apparently that he was coming to grips with that as well, and decided to want to start going to church with her, and had told her the same thing as well hours before he died. So she's just reflecting on that he had accepted Christ into his life, and hopefully that's where he is now.
Yeah, I certainly believe that to be so. If because that's what I believe. So I'm certainly happy to hear that. And that guy, he's an amazing guy on earth. I'm sure he's going to be an amazing guy up in heaven, because everybody loved him. If you guys are familiar with this story, just all the love that outpoured from the fighters. Even though he only was 2-6 in the UFC, guys that would be in the same room as him, hitting pads, getting ready to go out to fight. They just always had good laughs, and he was always a great dude to them. So
yeah. Well, he's definitely missed by a lot of them, and condolences out to the family.
For sure. Well, Jay, let's go ahead and move on to something a little less sad. Actually, it's very happy. Completely different, of course, because a man died. But here we're just talking about fights again. So UFC 202 has a lot of fights, my friend. Now, we already knew McGregor versus DS2 was going to be the main event of UFC 202, and that's, of course, going to be next month in August 22nd. Listen to this lineup, Jay, or I should say, guys out there, listen to this lineup. Cowboy Cerrone versus Rick Story. Anthony Johnson versus Glover Teixeira. Neil Magny versus Dong Yun Stun Gun Kim. Carlos Condit versus Damian Maia, and Cody Garbrandt versus Takeya Mizugaki. Those fights have just been released over the last week. Jay, I'm certainly going to let you get in here in a second, but I just need to just say this really quick. Outside of UFC 200, I can't think of a better main card in a long time.
Yeah, it's a fantastic card outside of 200 for sure, Mike. I'm excited for 202 as well.
Yeah, Cowboy Cerrone, Rick Story. I'm early on. I'm going to pick Cowboy right now, as we discussed. He's rolling towards the belt. Jay, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'd agree with Cowboy winning over Rick Story. Rick Story hasn't looked like he has in the past, I guess I should say, his last couple of fights. He hasn't looked like he did when he first started winning fights.
Right.
There's a difference there with him, and I don't know what it is, camp or something.
I think Cowboy just needs to worry about his wrestling. But, Cowboy's great off his back, so I think he lands a submission there if that happens. But I think Cowboy's probably going to keep it standing because he's got some great, wrestling defense, takedown defense. So I'm going to roll with that. Anthony Johnson versus Glover Teixeira. That, guys, of course, was supposed to already happen. It's what was supposed to happen a couple weeks from now. But Anthony Johnson was pulled out of the fight, and then they go ahead and dropped Glover from the fight. Now it's going to be at 202, so I'm glad that they didn't just have them fight different people. Jay, what are your thoughts on that?
That's fantastic that they didn't fight anybody else, and now here we have 202 just getting stacked, and this is going to be an awesome fight, man. Honestly, this is one of the fights I look forward to most, just because I want to see Anthony Johnson fight again. I want to see another. I want to see if he's truly progressing in his game, because the last time we saw him, of course, he had that takedown.
On Ryan Bader.
On Ryan Bader. And that just made it an even more amazing accomplishment. And I want to see if he does something like that, similar. So.
Yeah, and both these guys, I know people say this all the time. They come to fight, but they do. These guys, they're smart fighters, they're tactical fighters, but they really do bring it. Jay and I, of course, if you have been listening to the podcast, know we really love Anthony Johnson. He's a great guy. Glover's a great guy too. But I mean, I'm going Johnson. I think we might actually have covered this fight before the injuries. But I'm picking Johnson on this one, Jay.
Oh yeah, early pick. I'm picking Johnson, and probably right before the fight, I'd pick Johnson.
Yeah. Moving on, Neil Magny versus Dong Hyun Stun Gun Kim. Kim has been gone for about a year, I believe. Magny has been looking great, minus that little bump in the road with Damian Maia. This is a tough fight for me to call, and I realize it's just in the fight announcement, so we're not going to get too deep into it. But I'm going to pick Magny early, but beware of Dong Hyun Kim's strength and just bullying you around.
Yeah, I'd probably go with Magny right now.
Yeah, he certainly has the reach, but we'll see what happens with Kim's strength as well. Carlos Condit versus Damian Maia. What a fight. I'm glad Carlos Condit has come back to fight. He thought about retiring. I really hope, he gets another title shot after this win, or maybe like if they give him another fight, if he wins 2 in a row, he can fight for the belt again, because I believe he won that fight against Lawler. It was a close fight. I believe it so much that I lost $400 on it. And I'm going to pick Carlos on this. I don't think Damian Maia can deal with a fighter like Carlos Condit, who is so well-rounded and solid off of his back.
But here's the thing, though. Why isn't Maia fighting Lawler already?
Yeah, they wanted to give it to Tyron Woodley. I think
Maia deserves it a bit more than Tyron does at this point.
Yeah, I think it should have been Wonder Boy and then Maia and then maybe
that
Tyron.
too. And what am I thinking? Wonder Boy is even ahead of Maia in my opinion.
Yeah.
But Maya's right there with him. But we're talking about Carlos Condit here, of course. So Carlos Condit, I think, you know how people are always saying, well, if you think that he should be fighting Lawler and has a chance against Lawler, why would you pick Condit over Maia? Well, you know what? It's the styles. It's the styles that make these fights, like you hear so often people say. But it's true. I mean, you can't do that sort of MMA math, they call it, and say this guy can beat this guy. But if we're talking about Carlos Condit against Damian Maia, yes, he has a chance to take down Carlos, but Carlos is a dangerous man on the ground too. He's not going to go out easy. Yep. I could see this going either way, but at this point, Carlos has got nothing to lose and way more to gain at this point. So I think that he fights like a madman in this fight and wins it, takes it.
Yeah, I think that Carlos, he's so much more well-rounded. Now, Damian Maia has stirred up his game for sure. But, when Damian Maia takes you down, he usually stays on top. But with Carlos Condit, I think he can probably get away from being taken down and land some really good punches. So that's where I'm going with Carlos Condit as well. I think we're both in agreement on that.
Yeah, and we're not too worried about Damian Maia's punching strength.
Exactly.
And that's what I think that Carlos had to worry about with Lawler. And he doesn't have to worry about that here. Yep.
Now, I'm going to call it Cody Garbrandt versus Takeya Mizugaki. I started chuckling there because, Jay, I want you to please tell me what you texted me when I told you about this fight.
I said poor Mizzy, because this poor guy, man, he every new up-and-comer that is just, looking like a stud in that octagon, they just so happen to be, they get put against Mizugaki every time, Mike.
Yeah, he's a perennial, top 10 guy. If you guys remember right, I did call for this fight. I thought it was going to be Garbrandt versus Mizugaki after the Garbrandt had won his fight against Almeida, because there's a lot of people wondering who he should fight. And I thought to myself, Takeya Mizugaki for that reason, and it sure enough came to fruition. I am going to take Takeya Mizugaki. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to take Cody Garbrandt. He's going to knock him out probably in the second round, if not the first.
It's sad. It's very sad. Yeah, I would say the same thing. First round KO.
Well, we're getting close to the end here at News Corner. Michael Chiesa is out of the Tony Ferguson fight at UFC Fight Night 91 in July. Ferguson is now facing newcomer Landon Venata in the co-main event. So Chiesa's, we're not sure when he's going to fight, but Ferguson is fighting a newcomer. By the way, Khabib Nurmagomedov, the big mouth, I'm going to start calling him, was giving Ferguson some crap for actually wanting to get paid and fight, for training for a fight and wanting to continue to fight. So I didn't like that. I'm picking Ferguson to beat Landon, obviously. Jay, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm picking Ferguson to demolish Landon. Demolish. Yeah. Ferguson, to me, Ferguson is one of those guys that he will be. I've said it before, but I'll keep saying it. He's going to be a champion in the UFC. He will be a champion.
Yeah, I think it could be over the next couple of years, if not this year. Well, not this year. It's actually July, so I guess it won't be this year. But I'll say by next year.
Yep.
The last note on that fight, and I think the reason why they, that fight card, I think the reason they wanted Ferguson on the fight as well is because the latest tough winner, Ryan Hall, he's off the fight now with Alex White. His fight with Alex White is done because an undisclosed injury to White. So if you guys were waiting to see what Ryan Hall was going to do after winning tough, we're going to have to wait a little bit longer. And the last thing, Sage Northcutt signed by Reebok to an individual, they signed him individually, kind of like Conor McGregor, Paige Van Zandt, not just, obviously because everybody rocks the Reebok by being in the UFC, but Sage Northcutt is now individually signed. Yeah.
You know what? I think that's part of Sage Northcutt's problem right now. I think that
too much too soon?
Too much too soon. Exactly. I think that people have put him on a high pedestal from his very first fight in the UFC. And I think that's unfair to do to any fighter coming in from some other organization. I don't care what kind of stud you are in some other organization. When you come to the UFC, you're fighting the top echelon of fighters. You're fighting the cream of the crop. And to push him, promote him like they were doing is just they are doing it. They're still doing it, Mike. Don't you think it's pretty insane? I mean, and it's not to say that I don't like the guy. I mean, I think the guy's a good up-and-coming fighter, shows a lot of prospect, but why push him to that status already? Like he's going to be one of the elite. I mean, he could very well be, but why push him now?
Well, that's a question for Reebok because, there's a question for Reebok, Sage Northcutt, and maybe even his dad. You've brought up, of course, his dad pushes him a lot.
Even for the UFC too, though. The UFC's doing it.
Well, they have him. Well, when we get to UFC 200, they have him fighting guys that aren't super great yet. But I will agree with you that the push on him is immense. It's something that I think they have a great fighter, but we've never seen it before like that with someone who, like you said, hasn't really done as much in the sport. I guess it's because he just ran through his regional career. It was like 8 knockouts, or no, sorry, it was like 5 knockouts in 6 fights or something. But I do find it interesting that Reebok wants to sign him this early.
Yeah.
And that's just pretty much what I had to say about that. I mean,
yeah. But I mean, more power to the guy. Look, if he can make that money and get that sponsorship deal, that more power to him. But I just don't understand how they pick and choose who they want to give their sponsorship deals to. I have no idea.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's move on to the I don't know if I would say it's the meat of the show, but it's the big time part of the show that we've got a big time week this week.
Yes.
We pick 'em.
We're going to do UFC Fight Night 90 on Thursday. Rafael dos Anjos versus Eddie Alvarez is the main event for the lightweight title. I will be there. Look on Fight Pass, which is where it's going to be at. I'll be at the very top, final row, me and my wife.
Well,
so
nowadays that's pretty much all we can afford, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Nosebleed seats at a fight, it's crazy.
Yeah, I looked into UFC 200, and no, I didn't even look for UFC 200. I knew it would be sold out, and with not in my price range.
Yeah, but you will be out there for all the festivities and everything, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, for the fight week, I'll be down there. I'll be leaving Wednesday, and I'll be down there for the fan convention, and I'll be at the Thursday night's fight, like I just said, and be watching everything going on after that. So
you be sure and you let all them fighters know about the MMA Think Tank podcast.
I'm on top of it, my friend. Believe me.
All right, brother.
But does Eddie Alvarez know about Rafael dos Anjos? I'm a big Eddie Alvarez fan, but I can't seem to pick him against dos Anjos.
Yeah, me neither. I think that would be crazy if you did, honestly. And I like Eddie Alvarez. I think he's a great family man, good model for the sport,
Yeah.
He's a good role model. But dos Anjos is he's a beast, man. He's a beast. He and I have to do something here, Mike. I have to go back to many, many podcasts ago where I did kind of allude to maybe he was on the stuff. the roids. And I have to apologize to Dos Anjos because I can no longer say that, man. The guy hasn't been caught. We've had these new rules in effect. USADA's been on top of it, random drug testing, all these fighters, catching people left and right. Guess who hasn't been caught? Dos Anjos. So, I apologize. The guy's not on roids. He's just a beast.
Yeah, it's like I remember obviously when you did that, and I certainly could see where you're coming from, but what I was saying too was that his change of camp with Andre Pederneiras, I think that's really what did it. But man, yeah, he certainly is not the guy that that lost to Clay Guida.
No, he's not.
He looks unbeatable except for maybe Tony Ferguson. So
yeah, I think Ferguson's one of the few that has a shot at beating him.
And I will say this: I think Eddie Alvarez is going to get dropped in this fight, kind of a flash knockout, and get right back up because that's what Eddie Alvarez does. So when that happens, that doesn't mean he's lost.
It depends. It depends on what kind of ref we have in there.
Well, that's certainly true. But I am picking Dos Anjos by. Man, it's tough to pick by finish for Eddie because the last time I saw him finish was by Chandler by rear naked choke, and that's something you don't see as much by Dos Anjos. He usually just puts it on you with the punches and the kicks. So it's 5 rounds. I think Dos Anjos will get it done somewhere in the championship rounds by knockout TKO.
Yeah, TKO. Yeah, I'm guessing by the 3rd before the championship rounds.
Okay. Derek the Black Beast Lewis versus Roy Big Country Nelson. That doesn't sound like WWE. I don't know. But these guys are real MMA fighters. Jay, I have been going back and forth on this. Young versus old. Does Big Country really want this?
No.
Why don't you go first, Jay? Because I still don't know.
Roy Nelson has been phoning in his fights since the last, 3-4 fights. He's just been phoning it in, and he just does not look like the fighter he once was. Derek Lewis, on the other hand, has been looking like a beast. I think Derek Lewis is going to knock him out. And he's hard to knock out.
Exactly.
But that's just a testament to Derek Lewis's hands. I'm telling you, he's going to knock out Nelson. He's going to catch him slipping.
That certainly could be because, I go back to Derek Lewis's last fight against Gabriel Gonzaga. And Gonzaga and Nelson are not exactly the same, but they're closer than you may think. They're both really good at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and the clinch and stuff like that. And Lewis was strong enough to get past that and knock Gonzaga out. Now, Gonzaga may not have the chin that Nelson has, but Nelson's chin's got to go at some point. And Lewis has, strong hands. So I'm going to lean towards Lewis. I guess I will pick Lewis by KO. I just don't see this going the distance. But I will say maybe it goes to the 3rd. So I'll pick Lewis in the 3rd. Yeah.
And anything can happen. Roy Nelson can catch Lewis, but I'm just going with Derek based on the way Roy's been looking.
Yeah. Tough 23 finale. That'll be Friday, the day after, on the 8th. Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Claudia Gadelha 2. Their rematch, of course. I thought Gadelha won their first fight, but it was close. I'm going Gadelha here. She's more well-rounded, and I think she's going to really let loose after the experience she's had on Tough, coaching Tough. Because Joanna, especially in the beginning, would not leave her alone. And Gadelha, by the way, I like both these ladies. I think they're fantastic fighters, and I think they're really great for the sport. They're just a little different. But Gadelha has taken so much crap, and I think she's really going to let it loose on Jędrzejczyk.
Yeah, usually you'd have to go with the champ on fights like this, but when you had a first fight that could have went either way, and Gadelha, yes, in my opinion too, I think that she stole that fight. I think Gadelha is going to win this fight too. I think everything that happened, it's a culmination of all that stuff, the beef on the show, and Joanna just pissed her off, to be blunt.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to show during the fight. And Claudia is the type, which we've seen on the show, is she doesn't really let everything get to her, but she's remembering that stuff. She ain't forgetting any of it.
Exactly.
And she's going to fight smart there, and she will win that fight.
She and by the way, I've actually really enjoyed this season.
Yeah, I did too.
Excuse me. But I can tell she's very nice. She's very that's okay. We'll see when we fight. That's okay. But man, the gears are going. The gears are going to really get it going. And I will tell you, man, I become such a big fan of hers. I liked her as a fighter before, but just her demeanor on the show, the way she's coached, the way she's cared for her fighters.
Yep, I like both of them, but you're right. It's yin and yang. They're totally different fighters, totally different types of people, and I think this is going to be a war, but Gedalia's going to take it.
Yeah, and I want to tell you too is I've moved Claudia Gadelha into that Misha Tate, Juliana Pena, the fighters that I really like, and I might have a little bit of a crush on Claudia Gadelha now because I just think she's fantastic. A crush on her in general. She's just I really just think she's fantastic. But moving on to guys I don't have a crush on, but are still fine fighters. The co-main event: Will Brooks making his UFC debut versus Ross Pearson.
All right, I do have a crush on Will Brooks. No, I'm just kidding. Not in that way. I'm just saying when it comes to Will Brooks as a fighter, I think that dude has got it. And I'm glad he's now with the UFC. This fight is just amazing. I can't wait. Can't wait, Mike.
Yeah, for me, it's. I wish they both had more time to train for each other.
Yeah,
because Will Brooks did step in to fight Ross Pearson. I'm going Will Brooks right now simply because his wrestling's top notch. Jay, I know, like you said, you've been a big fan of Brooks as well. I certainly have thought he's been as good as you say he is as well. I'm more of a fan of Ross Pearson. But Will Brooks slowly has become, is getting me there to liking him. I'm picking Will Brooks, unanimous decision. What do you think?
Do I really have to answer? Will Brooks, I think Will Brooks is going to TKO him, man.
TKO, that's what I was looking for. I was wondering what you're going to pick.
I think that he's going to do it. Not early. I think it's going to be late. Probably third round.
Gotcha. I think the only thing Ross Pearson has here, against Will Brooks, that is, because he's a fine fighter, is maybe catching him with a one-hitter quitter, because he's got that power, and he's still a solid fighter. So, and we don't know about the octagon jitters either. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see.
Let's move on to the super card. This card is amazing. It's called UFC 200, and it's Saturday, July 9th.
Did you hear though? Daniel Cormier got hurt. He's out.
What?
Daniel Cormier's out. It just came out this morning.
Don't say that. I know you're lying because I'm on the boards like every 3 hours or something. Not on the boards, but on the websites.
I know. What's funny, guys, is when I do tell Mike something and he hasn't heard it yet, he's like, "What? I was just on there. I didn't see anything." Like he can't believe it sometimes.
Well, because sometimes you're joking with me, so it just depends. Let's go ahead and start from the bottom to the top. Guys, we're just gonna roll through some of these earlier fights quickly, because at the end, of course, we're gonna have a little more to talk about. Jim Miller versus Takanori Gomi. We will see if Miller still has it, Jay. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I was gonna say that if you would have asked me a year and a half ago, I would have said Jim Miller all day. Now I don't know. I'm still going Jim Miller. But who knows?
Yeah, Gomi has looked better lately in his win and losses. But, of course, Jim Miller, I think, has been fighting the better people. So I'm going to roll with Jim Miller until he loses his fight. If he loses his fight, then I think he really is maybe done with his career.
Yeah.
Agreed. So kind of in the same boat here, maybe not as much, is Joe Lozon versus Diego Sanchez. It's a battle between two of the fan favorites. This is your Fight Pass prelim, main event, basically. I'm going Joe Lozon, but I don't feel great about it.
Yeah, I wouldn't feel great about it either. Both guys haven't looked so good, but I'd go Joe Lozon too.
Yeah, if you really think about it, Diego Sanchez has slowed down a bit, but I can't remember the last time he's been submitted, if he's ever been submitted, and that's Joe Lozon's bread and butter. So I'm going Lozon, I think, in a decision win. But this is really a toss-up fight for me.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to pick this one.
Something we talked about earlier on the show was Gegard Mousasi now fighting Thiago Santos. Just to give the stats again on Santos, 13-3, 8 KOs, 1 submission on a 4-fight win streak over Marquardt, Theodoro, and Steve Bosse. I'm still going Mousasi on this, but they did find a decent guy to fight Mousasi.
I still think that Mousasi's going to win this fight, but Mousasi's got his work cut out for him against this guy. This guy Santos looks beast.
Yeah, and this is gonna put him on the map for sure if he beats Mousasi. I'm still gonna roll with Mousasi, but if Santos beats him, it's gonna really show, I think, where both of them are. A lot of times we discuss that it's more on one side of who wins or loses for their career, kind of like we were talking about with Jim Miller and Gomi. So I certainly see what you're throwing down there.
I picked Mousasi, but he's been up and down. He's been up and down lately, so I don't know, man. Like this fight too, even though it's coming against a guy that he's not that not a lot of people really know. He's not a household name in Santos. He's still a guy that is very dangerous, and Mousasi hasn't looked that great. Well, he's been up and down. It's a toss-up, man. We'll see.
Yeah, it's a short notice fight too, so that's that's a wrinkle as well.
Yeah.
Moving on, we got Sage Northcutt versus Enrique Marin. That's the second person I want to bring up that we may not know because I wasn't too familiar with him. Marin is 8-3, 5 subs, never been KO'd or TKO'd. He's got that in his feather in his cap there. But he lost his UFC debut, which was his last fight. So this is kind of a fill-in fight as well. I'm going to roll with Northcutt here until he fights a decent name.
Yeah, there's one thing I have to find out before I pick this fight. Is he any relation to Cheech Marin? No?
I will look that up.
Okay. Well, if he's not, I'm going Northcutt all day.
Awesome. Looking at TJ Dillashaw versus Rafael Dos Anjos 2. This is, I believe, this is probably going to be the Fight Pass, excuse me, not the Fight Pass, but the FS1 prelim, main event, basically. And that tells you something. TJ Dillashaw just lost a close fight in losing his title in his last fight against Dominic Cruz, and now he's not on the main card. So he's going to try and get his revenge against Rafael Dos Anjos. First fight was a split decision for a Sunsao in Brazil. Most thought TJ won, such as myself. So there might have been some Brazilian hijinks going on there. I'm not sure. We've seen that before with fighters in that area. I'm going with TJ Dillashaw, not the same guy, Jay, obviously, from their first fight.
Yeah, definitely not the same guy. Against a guy like a Sunsao, TJ's much quicker, got better hands. He's going to take out a Sunsao. TKO.
Yeah, Sunsao's a very well-rounded guy, but he hasn't fought in so long, and even though he's well-rounded, he's not as well-rounded as TJ. Yeah. I think this is. I think TJ a title shot after this.
Wouldn't you say that TJ is the toughest fighter he's faced? Sunsao's faced.
Oh, for sure. He fought. I mean, Sunsao fought Faber in the WEC when Faber was pretty good. I mean, was still fairly good, I should say. He wasn't the champ then, but he was still.
I don't knock
fights removed, but currently, TJ Dillashaw for sure.
Yeah, I don't knock Faber and how he was back then, but I think Dillashaw is just a better fighter right now than Faber was.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that Sunsao's not with the ring rust. I just don't think he's going to have anything for Dillashaw. And Jay, you said you think he's going to knock him out when?
Yeah, TKO, probably even the second round, Mike. Early second even. It could go that soon.
It's going to be interesting because Dillashaw, he has finished some guys, but it's taken a while till the 5th round. This won't be a 5-round fight, so I'm gonna roll with TJ winning it by unanimous decision. He may hurt a Sunsao, but I think he fully wins his fight, no problem.
He could even hurt him and then sub him. That could happen.
Certainly possible. Still on the prelims, we're looking at Johnny Hendricks versus Kelvin Gastelum. I mean, all these fights are great fights.
Yes, they are.
I don't know where Hendricks' head is right now after losing to Wonderboy.
Yeah.
I know Kelvin is always got a good head on his shoulders. He's always coming to fight. Great fighter. But I'm going to go with Johnny Hendricks on a bounce back fight.
Ooh, we're going the opposite, buddy. I'm going Kelvin. Kelvin, to me, he was on that upswing for a while, and I thought he was really going to be the real deal. He was going to go for that belt and take it. I thought he really was. I think he's going to come back. He's got something to prove right now, Mike, with his career, I think, as well as Hendricks, of course. But like you said, Hendricks did not look well in his last fight. He looked terrible against Thompson.
He was confused, man. He didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, and the thing is, he supposedly had the best training camp of his life back then. Everything was going great. He lost the most weight. He looked the best he's ever looked. yet his mindset was just not there. And it was just really weird. You know what? As much as Thompson exploded on him, he imploded as well, I think, mentally. He just didn't look good. And now we have him coming back, fighting Kelvin Gastelum. This is going to be a fight that I think Kelvin is going to – he's going to win. He's going to beat Hendricks, and then where does Hendricks go from there? You know, it's going to be – that question will be going up there. Mark my words. Hendricks is going to lose this fight.
So how are you picking it for this fight? How is it going to happen? Third round, second round? Decision?
Oh, no, I don't. I think it could even be a decision, Mike, but I just think it'll go solidly in Kelvin's favor every round.
Yeah, I think it's going to be on the closer side, but I'm going to pick Hendricks via decision because of the wrestling. You know, but this can go.
Kelvin's got great wrestling and great wrestling defense as well.
Yeah.
So,
if Gastelum does get this fight, he's beaten a former champion Hendricks. What do you think Gastelum should go from here? Where do you think they should put him? Do you have a fighter in mind? Do you have a trajectory you want to put him on?
No, but I think he should fight against another top 5 opponent, whoever it is.
Yeah, because this is such a big jump for him.
It's a huge jump. But
yeah, because he's ranked number 3 or 4.
Hendricks, yeah, so. Yeah. I mean, he's got to have at least another couple fights before he goes for that belt, I think, even after Hendricks. But that said, depending on how he beats Hendricks, if he destroys Hendricks, like just demolishes him, which I don't think it's going to happen that way, but if he did, then you got to start thinking, give him maybe one more fight. If he does the same thing, then boom, he's going up for the belt. I don't know. That's the way I look at it. Because at one time, Kelvin was looked at like he could be the next big thing in that division.
Yeah, I think it was he beat Uriah Hall to win tough, and then he won. I think a couple of fights we were really thinking he was going to win.
Yeah,
like you said, go from
really
there.
Good.
Started having some weight cut problems.
Yep.
So, but that's something. Just to back up a second, that's something that I really love about this card is that it's not just fights that are going one way or the other way. You've got rematches. You've got fights that like this Hendricks Gastelum. Jay's picking Gastelum healthily. I'm picking Hendricks healthily. It's this card is fantastic.
And if you remember, he lost against Neil Magny, split decision. Kelvin did.
Yeah.
His last fight. He also lost against Tyron Woodley, but he TKO'd Nate Marquardt and beat Jake Ellenberger, submitted him. So he's beat good guys. Rick Story. It's just one of those things where
he gets rolling, then he loses.
He's got something to prove now as well.
Yeah.
So does Hendricks. So this is like the battle of two guys that have something to prove. So we'll see what happens.
Well, but before I move on, do you think this might be fight of the night based off what you're saying?
It could very well be. Very well be. These two guys could put on a show for us. Who knows?
Moving on, we've got Kat Zingano versus Juliana Pena. I'm a big Pena fan ever since her days on Tough. I love Kat Zingano also, but Zingano hasn't fought in like a year and a half, and that was her loss to Ronda Rousey, which, look, no big deal losing to Ronda Rousey, but she hasn't fought in a year, and Pena's been fighting fairly steadily in her last couple fights. So I'm going to go with Pena, even though Zingano has been at the top for a while, and Pena has just got into the top 10. I'm going Pena by decision. Zingano's so tough. I just don't think she gets finished.
Yeah. Pena's one of those fighters that looked great to me when she first got into the UFC. She still looks like a great prospect. Kat Zingano's more well established, yet, like you said, she hasn't been fighting in a while. And for that reason alone, I got to go with Pena. I think Pena's going to win this fight by decision.
Yeah, and I think if she beats Zingano, I really think she probably is the next shoe-in for the title shot.
It catapults her. It definitely, maybe, if not the title shot, maybe one more fight, one more win.
I certainly agree. Something that I don't know if we're going to talk too long about unless I don't know you as well, my friend, is Cain Velasquez versus Travis Brown. I'm looking at Cain Velasquez to run through Travis Brown. And I say that not as someone who thinks Cain Velasquez is God, like a lot of people out there think he is. I just think the matchup is just steadily in Velasquez's favor.
Yeah, he's a much bigger guy, more well-rounded.
the gas tank, everything.
Yeah, there's a lot going for him here. That said, Travis Brown, he's pulled upsets before. He can do it. But we're not going to start picking fighters based on can he pull an upset. No, we're going to pick fighters smartly here, and I'm going with Cain Velasquez too.
Yeah, and I really don't want him to get the next title shot if he wins here. He's got enough of those. Give him another fight, and then maybe a title shot possibly from there on. Because like we've discussed in the past, the heavyweight division is not that great.
Mike, what day is it?
Today is July 3rd.
Okay, well, it's July 3rd. It's Sunday. We have how many more days till UFC 200?
We have, it's less than a week now because it's on Saturday.
Okay. So we have roughly about 6.5 days or so. Okay, so Cain Velasquez still has that amount of time.
Oh, I know where this is going.
That amount of time where he can possibly get injured.
Yes.
So we need to make sure he gets to that octagon injury-free.
Put him in a padded room, Jay.
Yeah. Boy in a bubble. That's all I'm
Exactly.
saying. Boy in a bubble.
Let's see here. First of all, that was the first fight, I believe, on the main card. Actually, I think Zingano Pena was. But a fight I've really been looking forward to for a while now is Jose Aldo versus Frankie Edgar 2. This is for, the I almost said vacant featherweight championship because I don't think Conor's going to defend it, but it is considered the interim featherweight. The first fight, look, Edgar, it was close, but it was Edgar's featherweight debut against Jose Aldo. Now he's more comfortable at this weight, I'm sure. Edgar has a 2-inch reach advantage. Where's Aldo's chin, Jay? After getting knocked out by McGregor and all the wars he's been in.
Where's his mind?
Right. So, but saying all that, I'm picking Frankie Edgar in this one. I'm picking it close.
Really?
I am.
Yeah.
Because I look at Jose Aldo in his career and what I've been saying on this podcast for a while, and of course before we did the podcast, is Jose Aldo hasn't looked the same as he's been looking. He's going through decisions a lot. And now he just got knocked out. He's been fighting for a long, long time, and I think this is Edgar's time to now take it. I mean, I'm knocking out Chad Mendes. I think what really gave him confidence, the fact that I think he won rounds 4 and 5 in their first fight, even though most of the cards came back 49-46. I really think that Edgar, his gas tank doesn't end. I think Aldo's going to get too tired this time, and I think it's going to go to the cards, and I think it's going to be probably 48-47 Frankie Edgar this time. Yeah,
it all depends on where his mindset's at. That said, I can't go against Aldo in this fight. I love Frankie Edgar. Not even a huge fan of Aldo, but I'm a huge fan of his fight game, of course.
Right.
Yeah, I've got to go with Aldo. I think Aldo's going to do it here. I think he's going to beat him. Will it go to a decision? I don't know. I think Aldo will possibly finish this fight. I think maybe in the championship rounds.
Really? He couldn't finish him the first time? You think he'll finish him this time?
Yeah. I think because Aldo has a lot to prove right now.
That is true, coming off an embarrassing, knockout from McGregor.
That's an understatement.
Yeah. Well, you put a good case up, but I'm going to stick with Edgar, so we'll certainly see what comes out of this one. So before we get to the co-main and main event, actually we got a few left. I'll digress a bit. Miesha Tate versus Amanda Nunes is your third fight on the main card. Look, Miesha Tate now the bantamweight champ for the ladies. I look at this fight, Jay. I look at it. They're both close in skill. Tate's the better wrestler. Yeah. Nunes is the better striker, but not as much better than Tate is as a wrestler.
No. Two things here. One, I'm glad that Nunes is finally going to get her fight for that belt.
Yeah.
Because we've been saying that for a while. And two, I think that Miesha Tate is just on another level. I think Amanda Nunes, even with her stand-up game, I will give it to Miesha Tate. And simply because what Miesha Tate did to Holly. Mm-hmm. Holly has the way better stand-up game, but she was smart enough to keep her distance.
Yep.
And she can easily do that with Nunes, pick her shots, and then go in for the kill. She will beat Nunes and finish her, Mike.
What round?
I'd say late 2, maybe early third.
I'm thinking third.
Early third, late 2.
Yeah, I don't think it gets to the championship rounds. I think that Miesha Tate is better all around, except for maybe Nunes striking is better, but it's not that much better. Like I said before,
if they were to go straight head to head and just throw punches at each other, yeah, I'd pick Nunes all day. But that's not going to happen. Miesha Tate is smart. She's smart.
Yeah, and she's and every fight since about 2 fights ago, her stand-up's gotten better, wrestling's better. I think she's going to take her down if she gets hurt a little bit by a punch. So yeah, I'm picking Tate in the third round, TKO on the ground probably. I think she's going to take her down and pound her out.
I agree.
Now we get to the co-main event and main event, and what I wanted to say earlier was the fact that Jay, I think you and I are differing on Frankie Edgar, Jose Aldo, and Gastelum and Hendricks. I believe those are the only ones we're differing on. Okay.
So far.
Yeah, so Brock Lesnar, Mark Hunt, we touched on this just a little bit already. I keep going back and forth. The diverticulitis is the big thing here. How is Brock Lesnar going to look with that? Mark Hunt's takedown defense has gotten better. He's fought guys like Frank Mir, who's a grappler, not a wrestler, but he's a grappler. He's fought some other guys too, who's gotten better. I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to give it to Mark Hunt because I think he may be able to get up after being taken down at least once or twice. But if he gets taken down a third time, I think Lesnar wins this fight. But that said, I'm going to go with Mark Hunt by knockout. I'm going to go, again, this is going to be a 3-round fight. I'm going to pick it in the second round because Lesnar doesn't go very far in his fights, win or lose. So I'm going to pick Hunt, knockout, round 2.
Yeah. There's a few things about this fight that are curious to me. One, I mean, of course, Brock Lesnar, it's already been mentioned that this is just a one-time fight deal. Right. So he doesn't have a contract with UFC. So there's a win-win here for the UFC. Number one, they get the big fan draw Brock Lesnar over for this one big fight. Mark Hunt is a fan favorite as well. So there's a lot of people that are backing Mark Hunt here in this fight. So if Mark Hunt ends up winning and beating Brock Lesnar, still a win-win for the UFC. It's a no-brainer to put this fight together for the UFC. A lot of people were questioning it. Why would they do this and why would they do that? Look, Mark Hunt, he's on his way out, so to speak. I mean, he's only got a few more fights left. I would. Well, assume.
No. He signed a contract for 6 or 8 fights. But sometimes guys don't finish those contracts, obviously. And Mark Hunt's 42 or 44. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying that I don't think he's going to finish all them fights. But here's the thing, though. Mark Hunt, he's got that punching power against Brock Lesnar, but Brock Lesnar's got that wrestling. He's a much bigger guy and everything. But as you said, though, all it takes is one punch from Mark Hunt, and it could be lights out for Brock Lesnar. And I don't see Brock Lesnar running into this fight with a double leg. I don't see it. Do you see that?
Well, how else do you see him doing it?
Honestly, timidly, kind of filling each other out in that first round. I don't think he's going to rush right in for a double leg. I think that he's going to try to feel it out. And Mark Hunt is not one of those guys you want to feel out very long because, like I said, one punch and he could be out. And I think he's going to catch him. I think he's going to knock him out in the first round.
Yeah, you think the first round. See, yeah. I think it might get to the second. I know you talked about making this fight, and I was one of those people who I don't understand why they put Mark Hunt in this situation. The fact that he's so close to a title fight that he could lose, but you know what, man?
Well, I'm saying because he's towards the end of his career. That's what I was getting at. He's towards the end of his career anyway, and I think that to have him knock out somebody like Brock Lesnar is huge, just huge. But if he gets beat by him, it's by a guy that's here for one fight and he's gone, you know?
Right.
I mean, I don't know. Yes, it does kind of hurt him in his career, but at the same time, he's almost out anyway. I mean, I don't really see the guy benefiting from sticking around much longer anyway.
Yeah, I see him giving it his one last chance at a title here at 42. Obviously, if he beats Brock Lesnar, he may get the next shot. He may have to fight somebody else to get the next title shot, but he could stop after that. I certainly see where you're coming from there. Before we move on to the main event, Brock Lesnar, if he decides to get out of his contract somehow with WWE, or maybe I'm not sure when his contract is over. Assuming he beats Mark Hunt, he comes in there and he's the Brock Lesnar we saw initially pre-diverticulitis. Do you want him back? Because I do.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. If he wins this fight and solidly, of course I do. Because it would shake up the division. The division is stale right now. We needed something like this, and that is why I think that the UFC went out and got this deal done. They did it for the fans. They did it for us because they know their heavyweight division sucks. It sucks.
Yeah.
And how else would you make it better or stir things up than to go out and get the one polarizing figure that was in your heavyweight division just a few years ago that really caused a stir for the UFC and catapulted the UFC? I would say Brock Lesnar helped catapult the UFC to what they are today.
Yeah, he's certainly one of those guys that brought more eyeballs. I mean, you look at like Royce Gracie, from the beginning showing jiu-jitsu, beating the bigger guys and all that stuff like that. You had like Chuck Liddell with the look, knocking people out. You have all these things. Ronda Rousey. Now, before Ronda Rousey, you're right. It was Brock Lesnar. You not only had a guy who was big in pro wrestling, who had that following. You had a guy who actually was a legitimate wrestler, had this physique that was crazy. I mean, you look at him when he beat Frank Mir, and he was yelling at outside of the cage, and his mouthpiece falls out, and all the saliva's running out. That was crazy. That was bringing eyeballs, and they get that back. That's gonna be
that's why I said this is a win-win for the UFC. Just to have him back, even for one fight, it's huge. But if he wins, like you said, how's he going to get out of that contract with the WWE? If he does, of course I'd want him around.
Yeah. Well, I say we just go and move on to the last fight. And people...
No, Mike, we have one more fight. Dada 5000 is back. He is back, baby.
That is awesome. He's now fighting the best in the world. And who wouldn't want Dada 5000?
Yeah, I think it's great. This is amazing. No, I'm just kidding you, Mike. He's not back. And I don't want to see that man back.
That's good, man. Guys who you do want to see though, John Jones versus Daniel Cormier. They're gonna have the rematch here. Their first fight, the way I looked at it, I know it was just about maybe 2 years ago. About first 3 rounds were close, but Jones pulled ahead in rounds 4 and 5. All right, Jay, Jones still has a 12-inch reach advantage. DC can win this in the clinch, and he made it. DC made it a fight the first 3 rounds.
Yeah.
But I still got to pick, John Jones here. Jones didn't look great against Ovince St. Preux, but I think he's going to look the way he normally does. Really finish Daniel Cormier? Man, I don't know. He didn't finish him the first time, but I think he has a chance, and I'm picking John Jones. I'm picking him by decision again.
Really? Can't fault you for that, and can't fault you for the way he wins and everything. Because I'd have to do the same. I can't go against the champ anymore. Or I know he's not the champ, but he was the champ, and it was taken.
The current interim champ.
Yeah, he's never lost a fight. I mean, the disqualification thing doesn't count to me. But I don't see him losing to DC. I think that their first fight really said it all, Mike. It's going to be the same old. I think, we've always seen DC like ragdoll guys and like have his way with the fighters he's up against. But when it came to John Jones did that to him. It was the total opposite. John Jones just ragdolled him and made him look like the chump. One thing we saw about John Jones years ago is when he did that to Ryan Bader. And we were like, wow, because Ryan Bader was this bigger, stronger looking wrestler, and here he was out wrestling the wrestler. It's just, John Jones is a freak of nature. His body type doesn't look like he's that strong, but he is. It's obvious.
That the elbows out of nowhere,
Yeah, he's got the speed, he's got the strength. That's why a lot of people, all the time, myself included, I'm like, this guy should fight at heavyweight at some point. Move up.
Yeah.
Cause,
yeah, I've been calling for that too, man.
Yeah, because he's just too darn good, and he's going to win this fight. Decision. I'm going the same.
There are a couple of things though that I'm bringing up too. Is DC, he kind of gassed in that fight. I think that's why round 4 and 5. He couldn't get much done, but that's because John Jones was putting it on him. It wasn't because he had a bad camp or anything like that. So I think that's another thing too. I think Jones is just the better athlete, and he just has it. He has the God-given, physique. That's just he didn't build that physique. Look, he lifts weights and trains. Don't get me wrong, but his awkward stance, his length, like 12 inches, that's a foot of reach. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So you talked about, you want to see him at heavyweight. I did too. I'm saddened because he said he doesn't want to go to heavyweight now.
Yeah.
He wants to fight a few more guys, and I don't know what's going to happen after that. But what do you think should happen with John Jones, after he beats Cormier, assuming he does?
Yeah, I like you said, we're assuming he does, but I have to back up though and say if he looks anything like he did in his last fight, he's in trouble. He better not fight that way. And DC's even made mention of it. If he fights like that, he's going to beat him. Now, even then, I still don't say DC automatically beats him, but DC has a hell of a better chance beating him if he comes in the octagon looking like that. But I don't think he will, Mike. I think he has a true hatred for DC. I really do. I could see it in his eyes when they interview. He really can't stand DC, and I think he's in there to try to just hurt him. I think that he's going to do that in this fight anyway. But if he wins, Mike, where does he go? The question is, where does anybody else go? Nowhere.
Yeah, you got Anthony Johnson. They still haven't fought. We still need to see that fight. That's the only fight, though, I want to see him fight, assuming Johnson gets past. But that's the
only guy I think that even stands a chance.
Yeah, if Johnson gets past Teixeira, that's the only fight that's left, really, before he moves on to the heavyweight division, even though he wants to fight Gustafsson one more time.
Why? What's the point of that?
Yeah, I don't know. But maybe that's what they're setting up by giving Gustafsson Blanchowicz.
Yeah. You know what? That would be a foul done to Johnson, because I think Johnson deserves it more than Gustafsson at this point.
Right.
But we'll see what happens. I still think that Anthony Johnson can beat Jones. Man, outside of that fight, like you're saying, man, there's nobody else. He's got to move up.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know what he's looking for, but maybe it's just because he's had such the problems outside of the cage that he wants to get back on a run before he moves up. But I don't know. Like with DJ, I understand. He wants to get that record. He's close to that record, and then he's gonna move up. So we'll see what happens.
Fighter of the month.
After Will Brooks left behind the lightweight belt at Bellator, we had Patricky Ferrer taking on a man that would deliver one of the most perfectly thrown KOs I've seen in any combat sport. That KO would put the belt around the man for a second time in his Bellator career, and also making Michael Chandler my fighter of the month for June.
That is a very good pick, and I have a different pick, but if it wasn't the pick I have here, that is staunchly the pick I'm going to pick. I would have picked. I'll say pick one more time just because I keep saying pick. And I'm going to say my fighter of the month, even though he didn't fight in the ring or the cage last month, which is June, is Kimbo Slice. Kimbo Slice, he lost his life. He fought for his life last month. He did lose that fight to heart failure, and with so much stuff going on, for some reason Jay and I forgot to talk about it.
Yes,
and I'm glad we have an avenue to talk about it now. So that's my fire of the month for June is Kimbo Slice. And Jay, if you don't mind, I'd like to just go ahead and read the thing I wrote about him.
Yes,
really
go ahead
quickly.
And do that. It was really well done. Go ahead.
So I'm not the best reader out loud, guys, but you may have already read it on Facebook when it happened. But the title of this is Kimbo Slice Dies Unexpectedly of Heart Failure. One of the most known MMA fighters to ever set foot in the cage died last night. Kevin Ferguson, aka Kimbo Slice, was rushed to the hospital, complaining of severe abdominal pain, shortness of breath, and nausea, and it was reported that doctors found that the former backyard brawler had a liver mass and congestive heart failure. Slice was placed in intensive care and then placed on a donor list, but he soon died thereafter. Kimbo Slice was loved and hated by MMA fans. To the purists, he was nothing more than a backyard brawler that you saw on YouTube. To the casual fans, he was a scary-looking guy that now had a shot in the big time. Whatever side you came down on, or a different side altogether, Kimbo Slice did one thing for MMA. He moved it farther into the mainstream. In Elite XC, Slice was the main attraction, and that promotion, not the UFC, was the first to be on live network television, and mostly because of him. Suddenly people were asking me, who was this Kimbo Slice guy? They didn't care about the major MMA stars of the day. They didn't care about Chuck Liddell. They didn't care about George St. Pierre or Anderson Silva. This big scary guy that knocked guys out on YouTube was on TV, and even though he was given winnable fights and would certainly lose against the best fighters in the world, he introduced millions of people to the sport I love. The Slice bubble burst when he was knocked out by Seth Petrozelli at Elite XC Heat back in 2008. Elite XC rose with Kimbo, but when Kimbo fell that night, so did they. Slice then moved on to the UFC. He didn't kick the door down to the octagon. Instead, the promotion put him on the Ultimate Fighter Season 10, an all-heavyweight season just to evaluate him. He didn't do too well, but again, his fight against Roy Nelson got huge ratings. So when the show was over, the UFC gave him a contract. Kimbo went 1-1 in the UFC, beating Houston Alexander, but then losing to Matt Mitrione. And with that first fight and win being a boring affair, he was cut. Slice then moved on to Bellator, where his fights against MMA legends Ken Shamrock and grudge match against Dada 5000 continued to do huge ratings. Both fights were duds. However, people were watching. It's true that Kimbo Slice never lived up to what he could have been, especially after he stopped training with UFC Hall of Famer Bas Rutten. He never really changed from the backyard brawler we saw on YouTube, but he was never afraid to fight anyone, and people wanted to see that. Whether it was journeyman or past their prime UFC fighters, Kimbo Slice fought them. With a final record of 5-2 and 1 no contest, Slice won some and lost some in his short MMA career. But whether you were excited to see him fight or said he took away from what was slowly becoming a respected sport, you watched him. Win or lose, you watched him. Rooting for him or against him, you watched him. So I say rest in peace, Kimbo Slice. Maybe you weren't always the fighter some of us wanted, but you made people curious about the sport I love, and you moved the needle, and for that, your place in MMA history is secure.
And that is beautiful, Mike.
Thank you, sir.
Very well written. And you know what? Rest in peace to Kimbo Slice, and condolences again to his family. I'm saddened that we weren't able to talk about it. I don't know how we ever glossed over that, but we did. And making up for that now, of course. And that's a great pick for the Fighter of the Month of June, Mike.
Yeah, it just kind of worked out, because we did, like you said, something just happened. It's going to happen, I guess, and it did, and we were able to, move it into June, and I am picking him because of this, not just because we forgot, but it's just easier for me to pick him now because of what happened.
Yeah, no, and it sucks because we've lost 2 fighters now this year, and just it's been a sad, first half of the year for mixed martial arts in that respect.
Yeah, and both fighters that people that were around them loved.
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, well said. Kimbo Slice did definitely move the chains here for mixed martial arts, so to speak.
Well, Jay, we're done with it looks like the show for now. I mean, we're going to come up on our next show almost directly after UFC 200. Yes. Is that what we're doing?
Yes, we are going to do a show after 200.
Yeah, I won't be getting home until Monday night, guys. So it won't probably go up until either Monday night or Tuesday. But Jay and I for sure are going to just, really go hard on UFC 200 and give our picks for the next UFC card, which is actually going to be Wednesday.
Yeah.
That's that Tony Ferguson card we talked about already. Just to the listeners out there as well, and the guys that are reading the Facebook, I'm working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so I'm going to try and do some writing to that point. Once I take off for the fan convention, the way I normally write, it's not going to maybe look the same because it's going to be a part vacation, part working vacation for the podcast. And so there'll be stuff on Facebook, but don't expect it to be as as sharp.
Yeah, and I want to say too, on our next podcast, it'll mostly be directed around UFC 200. We'll be talking about that in detail.
Yeah,
and also we'll be talking about some experiences Mike may have been gone through already out there while being there for the fan convention, etc. But we're not really going to focus too much on news. We're just going to focus on these fights. And also, unless, of course, some really big news announcement happens, which could happen at UFC 200.
Right.
So we'll find out. But aside from that, we're going to be focusing on these fights on the next podcast.
Yeah, and Jay, I'm glad you brought that up because that's what I'll for sure be trying to do, especially Friday and Saturday, is just posting some pictures from fighters that I meet and stuff like that.
And if you guys haven't visited the Facebook page yet, I suggest you do. Mike is constantly posting articles there that are well written, great articles by him. Also showing pictures of him at different fan conventions or different fighters he meets out and about. He's met a lot, folks, and it's insane the amount of pictures of fighters and stuff he gets. So anyway, guys, you could reach us at MMAthinktank@gmail.com. You can reach us at 925-237-1296. You can go ahead and give us a call, leave a message there if you want. It's the podcast line, so don't worry. Most likely nobody's going to pick up and, talk your ear off about anything. But
we would love to hear from you for sure. Whether
Yeah.
it's on the Facebook site or whether it's on the phone, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, who knows? If I'm at the computer, I may pick up. But anyway, give us a call. Let us know what you think about any of this stuff we've talked about or anything that you'd like us to talk about in the future regarding mixed martial arts, the UFC, Bellator, WSOF, all of it. We like it all. And we will be back in, about a week.
Yeah, have a good one, guys.